Once again, Bronson called yesterday, and my ire got up, and I just felt compelled to have to call back.
Okay.
Oh, this is the guy you work in food, right?
Yeah, I don't even know. I feel like we must be. He's in Korea, so I've never been there, so I don't know anything about that. But he was calling about GMO labeling as an anti-scientific position.
Yes.
With Bernie Sanders. I can't speak for Bernie Sanders, but I happen to be someone who is both not opposed to GMOs, but much in favor of labeling. And I wanted to point out just how ludicrous his position was.
Okay, please do. So now again, remind us, do you work in food services? Is that what it was or no?
Yeah, I work in the food. Yeah, I work in food, and I have to source out GMO all the time.
Okay.
One of my major issues is figuring out what ingredients that go into your food is genetically modified as a source or not.
Okay.
The bottom line, though, is that while genetic modification comes from science, Bronson's absolutely right. Scientists are doing that. The fact of the matter is that labeling is an ethical issue. It has nothing to do with science. Scientists who make that stuff shouldn't care.
That is exactly the point that I was trying to make with him, was that, and you call it an ethical, I call it a political issue, but it is, first off, aside from the fact that there is no evidence that I have seen that if you put that labeling, the GMO labeling there, that it's going to somehow prohibit the potential future for a golden rice to exist. I just don't see that. I would imagine if this is about golden rice, and God bless, I mean, I hope someday they do develop golden rice. But I'm quite convinced that in terms of that those people in need of golden rice will still purchase it if it says GMO on it, if it is golden in that sense.
Well, I actually kind of wanted to go a step further. So I do think it speaks to a larger point, which is that it's, whether you want to call it ethical or political, even beyond that, it's an economic issue. Now, we live in a consumer-driven economy. I mean, it's supposed to be a free market, which obviously is nonsense, but it's still consumer-driven, and more information is better for consumers. The more I know makes me a better consumer, and we live in a democracy, and the more I know, be a better citizen. And labeling, whether it be food, I don't care if it's GMO, I don't care if it's country of origin, I don't care what you're putting on the label. If it's valuable information, it's better for everybody.
Now, he would argue it's not valuable information because it doesn't tell you anything specific. It doesn't tell you anything that he deems as valuable. But obviously, if it's valuable to the consumer, it's valuable to the consumer.
It is. Well, but people are afraid of it. People are afraid of genetic modification. They don't know what it is, and they don't know where it is. Really, all conspiracy. You guys bring up Alex Jones all the time, and he may be a jerk and a moron, but there's an audience for it. And there's an audience for conspiracy theory in all kinds of places. And it comes out of ignorance and a lack of information, and a lack of good sourcing of information. And this just happens to be one more place where hiding what is, or obscuring what is going on, specifically with food, which is so important, makes it way more difficult for anybody to have a good sense of what's going on. Genetic modification isn't that big of a deal. Barely. It certainly is. To me, I equate to nuclear power. It's something we deal with every day. If something ever goes wrong, we're in a lot of trouble.
Right. That's true.
And people should be able to be informed on that. People should know. It's just crazy to me.
Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you, Brian. And let me just also repeat this, that if if I understand the argument is you do not label genetically modified foods, despite the fact that there's obviously a desire by consumers to know whether or not that information exists, because you are alerting people to something that you deem is not relevant in their choice. And to the extent that you perceive it as relevant in their choice, it is basically superstition, okay? And your concern is they're not going to buy it because of their superstition. And thus, it won't allow for the development of things like golden rice, which, as far as I know, doesn't exist. But I presume that there are maybe some crops that make it easier in some countries and some places to grow certain foods. I don't know, maybe, but I believe so. And there's no profit motive for the development of those things, right? Because we're not outlawing GMOs. We're just simply putting them in the labels, and you're just saying that the consumer market is not interested in those things. And therefore, there'll be no money for the research and development of something like golden rice, which is meant to provide nourishment for kids in areas where there's food insecurity, presumably in areas where it's very difficult to grow food. I mean, frankly, maybe we should not to deal with a vitamin deficiency, or maybe in some instances certain crops do better in certain areas with more or less water. Well, here's how I think we could resolve that, if that's really the genuine concern, and that does come about, because I'm not convinced. I don't really see the evidence that in some way that's going to. I'm not clear on how that one impacts the other. But here's what you could do. You could make the patent so invaluable to these companies that it becomes incumbent upon governments to fund this research. I mean, why do we have to make it? Why does it have to be left to profit-making ventures? I mean, if indeed the value of GMOs is that it provides something like, it can enrich rice to have a certain amount of vitamins or whatnot. Let's just leave that to make that the responsibility of governments.
I think that's totally true. And I also think the other thing that happens in this conversation is that if you're going to say that the critics of GMOs from a health and environmental standpoint are overblown and they're not credible and all the rest, one, you've never addressed the control issue, which is what we've mainly focused on.
Yeah, but
and number two,
it doesn't even need to get into that.
Because I think it's important to say this, though, that the claims of the benefits of this technology have also been vastly overstated.
Well, I'm willing to stipulate the claims of, I'm willing to say that someday there will be golden rice and all of that. But I think Brian brings up the best point about this.
No, but even in the short term, it's said.
Labeling is not scientific. There is no scientific reason why I want to know that my bananas are from Mexico or California. There's no science involved in that. It is a political and ethical decision on my part. I may not want California or Arizona. I may not want Arizona oranges because I don't appreciate SB 70 or something. I mean, there's no science there at all.
Well, you may want to buy something that's closer to you theoretically because you want to support less burden on a production chain or less transportation costs.
There's all different reasons.
That's a climate change
There's all different reasons. I may not like Rhode Island, and so I don't want to support their turnips or whatever it is.
Well, obviously, that goes without saying.
I mean, everybody says that.
Dude,
but I mean, so it's not the argument does not involve science when we're talking about labeling food,
but I think
or at least the full complement of why we label food.
I guess part of my issue though is I think this notion that we keep running into, though, that science is just some separate, autonomous, platonic area that doesn't interface with politics, that doesn't interface with business, so that it seems like in the past we've had this conversation constantly where people want to have this incredibly narrow, GMOs are great. Anything
Look, there are people out there who believe that GMOs are not safe.
No,
I am not necessarily one of those.
I'm not even
These
saying that.
people are conflating. Yes,
I'm just saying that the way the business is, it's directed in certain ways by the interests that are primarily affiliated with it. And that's more what we've been talking about, and people don't seem to get that.
Phoenix on Twitter says, except that the calls for labeling exist almost entirely with an unscientific argument. Again, the harm of GMO labeling comes from
Okay,
giving
well, you know
info-
what? Wait. Okay, I don't need to hear any more of that because I'm getting annoyed with this now because we keep repeating ourselves. I'm not making that call. I'm not responsible for anybody who is making that call. I am just saying I believe in labeling. I got no problem with it. There's no scientific reason why you should know how many calories are in your Slurpee either.
Well, in your Slurpee, in your
No,
Slurpee.
but wait a second. I'm serious about this. There's no scientific reason that you need to know. It's just that you decide you want to know how many calories you're ingesting by this. You already know it's not healthy for you to drink a soda. But we do it. I don't see people protesting that. I don't see people protesting like, if you don't support, if you allow for label, that's just has nothing to do with science. It has to do with just simply transparency. And yes, there are other things I'd like on the labels too. I would like to know. I would like to put factory farm or non-factory farm. Definitely.
Humane standards
None
on
of these,
animals.
I should say, none of these issues on labeling are high atop my list of where I put my energy in. But, I mean, when they come up, I address them, and that's it.